For all things outdoors, listen to the father of two, the Jesus-loving TV show hosting Harry, true blood American redneck, Ben Cole.
And listen to the outdoor filming, chef cooking, chocolate milk drinking, John Weissmuller. And we are
Rooted Podcast. Have you ever wanted some high-end products out in the woods? Look no further than our friends at R.W. Coolidge. They make duck straps, they make bags, they make gun cases. Whether you want canvas or leather, they got you covered. So for this hunting season, check out R.W. Coolidge for all of your needs.
All right, John, we're back, and we're going to talk about my favorite topic, which is waterfowl, ducks, geese, hunting, guns, blinds, ammo. You know me, I am a duck guy. That's what I do. I love the deer, but now if I can go get in a duck blind somewhere, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, man, I know you sure do love it all. I know it's a whole different world, this whole waterfowl thing, man. Which like me coming from the deer and turkey world, and then you get thrown in a blind with a hairy redneck that is blowing on a duck call. You're like, whoa, man, what is going on here? So it's a whole new world, but it's exciting. There's a lot that goes into it. You wouldn't think that a lot goes into a little duck, but my goodness, it sure does. So just like he was saying, whether it's a pond, whether it's we're going to talk about refuge, and we're going to talk about blinds. We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff that goes into it. So let's just dive into it, Ben. I tell you what, let's just start here, right? For someone like me, who is, who at one point in time just had no idea what was going on. Okay. Let's say you're brand new, you're starting out duck hunting. What are like the bare necessities that you need to just start?
The first thing you're going to need is a cheap shotgun, preferably a pump if you're just starting, because what you're going to want is the ability to not have any jams when you're first starting, right? Now, don't get me wrong, these semi-autos work phenomenally, but what I started with was a pump shotgun. I mean, I don't ever have any issues with my semi-autos either, but that's just where I started. I started with an 870 Express. It was just a little pump action 20 gauge with wood stock,
Nice.
just normal old 20 gauge there. But, what I would put in my bag is shotgun shells that are steel or that follow the laws of waterfowl hunting, which is steel, bismuth. You cannot have lead, essentially. So you can't just grab, Papaw's turkey loads and go out and shoot ducks, technically.
Right. Gotcha.
You just can't do that. The law is you have to have anything that's non-toxic. So lead is toxic to the water, right? And so we don't want to be dumping a bunch of lead in there, poisoning everything around. So that's why we switched years ago, and that law was created, was so that way we can help the environment and ecosystem as a whole. I would have my shotgun shells. I'd have some duck calls, and I'd probably have some Little Debbie's, maybe some Slim Jims. We're not sponsored by Slim Jims, but just snacks. You gotta have lots of snacks. But that's what I would have in my bag is snacks, duck calls, ammo, and maybe an extra choke tube or something. That's where I would start. I would start right there with the 870 or some kind of pump shotgun and the essentials in my bag to get going. Now, on the duck call side of things, don't get caught up in, I can't blow a duck call as good as somebody else. Well, all right, cool story, because have you ever sat in the woods and actually listened to ducks communicate? Some hens sound like they've been smoking for 80 years. You're like, there ain't no way that's a duck. That's got to be a human. No, sir. It is a duck. Every bird has their own tone. Every bird has their own sound. They're not all the same. It's just like in turkey hunting, man. I've heard some hens that sound absolutely awful. But guess what?
Oh, yeah.
It's them. It's
Some hens sound terrible.
not a human caller. So I think what we do is we put too much pressure on ourselves to be like, well, I'm not a world champion duck caller. I'm not good as, so-and-so down the street or whatever. It doesn't matter. If all you're trying to do is imitate a duck and get them to land or come in close enough for you to make that ethical quick shot, boom, 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 feathers flying everywhere. It's fantastic. But that's where I would start, is right there.
Okay, so you've got the gun, you've got the shell, right? That's legal. Okay, maybe you've got a little call. Let's kind of dive into the world of calls for a second. I want to go down this street with you. So, all right, little old mountain boy me, who maybe has seen a couple ducks, right, in his life before we started rolling around. Like, I may have seen a mallard and like a wood duck, and most people may think that, well, a duck quacks, and that's the end of that. It's like, once I really got into it, you really start to realize how much different little whistles, maybe a different pitches and things, different speeds, like the feeding cackle, things of that nature. So if you were to deep dive into the world of duck calls, like, what do you say? Like, man, I have to have this call on my lanyard because X, Y, and Z. Like what do you definitely have to have?
Well, the first thing I would look at is what is the easiest call to learn on, right? So the easiest
Okay.
call to learn on is going to be a double reed, but if you can master a single reed, you can run all of them. That's the whole point. Now, when you get into the cut downs and the timber calls, they're
Gotcha.
loud, they're barky, they take a whole lot of air. You have to really push from your diaphragm to make that sound. But let me tell you something. If you can get good on one of those, you will kill more mallards in the timber than the next guy, because you are louder and more aggressive at the calling game when you're trying to compete on public land with everybody in their 13th cousin. You have the edge if you can truly master that kind of cut down call. But for the beginner, get you a double reed. Like, for example, and honestly, I use a double reed today because I like the way it sounds. Our good friends from Duck Commanders, I have the Jace Robertson series double reed, and it has phenomenal range because I can get really low with it. I can whine with it. I can do all those things, but it still has enough bite to get up and make those high pitched quacks. More so, you want to look at what is easier for you to blow, right? I mean, that's just what at the end
Gotcha.
of the day, that's what it's all about, and it's going to take a whole lot of practice. So when I first started, I annoyed my parents. I mean, beyond repair. All they were like, "Oh, you go outside and do that. That's enough of that duck calling. You've done enough for the day." So when I turned 16, all I did was drive in my truck and run a duck call. That's where I learned how to do majority of the things that I learned was by driving and practicing every single day. I've still got the very first duck call that I started with on my lanyard. My dad got it for me back in the early 90s. It's a Daisy Cutter, one of the originals. Well, right back in the day when they started making them, and dude, I still got it. I still rock it on my lanyard. We're approaching the 30-year mark on the duck hunting. We still got about 4 years to go. But 4 or 5 years. But that's the thing, man. I started by just doing it. That's how I started, was just by doing it. And I didn't really give a crap about who was better than me or what. All I wanted to do was to learn how to do it. That's all I cared about. And if that's what your focus is learning how to do it and not being tied up in, well, they're going to think I sound like trash or he's going to make fun of me. Who cares? Give it back to them. Find something to make fun of them about how they don't have a beard, or like I say to people that don't have beards, it's like, well, the only people I know without a beard is women and children. So that's
That's right.
That's one of the things that I say. But that's the thing. You just have to be able to roll with the punches and give it back. And then one day, now, am I a world champion duck caller? No. Do I want to be? No. What I want to be is communicating with the ducks. I could care less what a human thinks about my duck calling. What matters is what is on the strap at the end of the hunt. If you can effectively communicate with mallards, ducks, period, in general, geese, all of them, if you can effectively communicate with them and get them in your decoy spread, you win. Period. Doesn't matter how many awards you have behind your name. It doesn't matter if you're a calling champion or not. It matters about how effective are you at landing ducks in your spread. That is what matters.
Now, do you always try to keep like a little, maybe like a teal call and a wood duck call on you also, just in case, or just depends on the time of year, or how's that work?
Well, I always keep a teal call on me. Wood ducks, not so much, because I call them little bush rockets, because, man, they're just more running through the trees at 100 miles an hour. You're just pretty much past shooting them. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there that can call a woody and get them to land. And if you can, please tell me how to do it. I would love to know how to land a wood duck. That would make my day. Please take the time.
Nice.
Send us a message or comment. And seriously, I would really like to know how to do that, because I've never done it. I've never seen it done. I would be really honored to watch that happen. But yes, I do keep a teal call on my lanyard, because you can effectively communicate with teal and you can work them into your decoy spread. And let me tell you something, teal are phenomenal morsels of food. They are delicious. Little bitty breast, but it is so good to eat. Oh man, it's good.
Huh. I didn't really realize that the teal was so. Like, is teal one of the better eating ducks, or?
Well, I mean, teal's really good. Wood duck is really good. Mallard is really good.
Yeah, I've had wood duck.
Basically, all of your puddle ducks are going to be delicious. The ones that I stay away from are your mergansers. They eat fish. They taste like fish. They smell like fish. I don't even shoot them anymore because I know that I'm not going to eat that bird. So I try to stay away from them, because they're nasty. They're greasy. And that's because of their diet, right? So your puddle ducks and your divers. So little history. We're going to take a pause of what I was saying. Little history. The canvasbacks used to be hunted with punt guns, right? And they would be, so a punt gun is this ginormous gun that sits on the bow of the boat, and they would like literally paddle up in the middle of a raft of canvasbacks or ducks in general. Boom, set that thing off, and would kill hundreds of them at one time. It's like putting 30 shotguns on the front of your boat in one barrel. So, and they would pack whatever they could in there, man, like spoons, forks, whatever. It didn't matter. They didn't care. But so that was going to the 5-star restaurants. So canvasback was served at high-end restaurants back in the day. Canvasbacks are delicious. Redheads are delicious. I think that, a ringneck, it is not the best tasting on the grill, but it's really good in jerky. So, there's different ways to cook all this stuff that is delicious. But man, I'm telling you right now, canvasback is delicious. And there's two kings of the taste side of things. It is going to be the sandhill crane, which is also known as the ribeye of the sky. And that is no exaggeration. That is no lie. That is just simply what it is. It is the ribeye of the sky. Man, I was in Canada a few years back with Remington at the time, and we got into a mess of those sandhills. Those things are like pterodactyls. They're huge birds. Really? I mean, dude, their beaks are like 4 inches or something crazy. Oh, wow. And they're razor sharp. Like your dog, if your dog runs out on a mature one and it's not dead, it'll poke its eyes out. I mean, it'll kill your dog. They're pretty intense. Wow. Yeah, I mean, they're pretty aggressive birds. I mean, they're big birds too. But we took them back. We cooked them because, obviously you can't bring birds across the border. You can't bring them from Mexico either. So you have to get them mounted wherever you are, and then they ship them to you. So that way you don't bring any kind of diseases or anything like that back into the country.
Gotcha.
Which the ducks fly from Canada anyway, so it doesn't really make sense, but whatever. So we cook them. Dude, I ate almost a full bowl of that sandhill crane. It was phenomenal. Wow. It was like...
Sounds like good stuff.
Dude, I don't even know what I can compare it to because it was better than any beef I've ever eaten in my life. It was better than the Wagyu. It was better than all that stuff. I'm having a hard time even finding something. It was more like an Axis deer. And, dude, Axis and elk are some of my favorite meats of all time. But this was really close to that.
Good stuff.
So, man, that's one that if you haven't gone and hunted one, you need to. They're a lot of fun. It's on the 41 list, if you're into that Grand Slam stuff. But the next one is the speckled belly goose. You want to talk about delicious, and you can kill them really well in Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, some spots of Tennessee, Western Tennessee, Mississippi. There's several places you can go and kill, and obviously westward. But man, those are some fine eating geese. I mean, they are just absolutely delicious. If I had to choose two to eat the rest of my life, it would be sandhill crane and speckled belly goose.
I've never heard of someone eating one of them.
Yeah, so like I was saying, the two that I would choose to eat the rest of my life would be sandhill and speckled belly.
How about it? Well, there you have it. Let's go shoot a bunch of them so we can eat them.
Yeah, I'd love for you to cook them up. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd be honored. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right, we talked about the basics, right, of calls, basics of as far as equipment. Now, let's transition to the basics of clothes. Like, I know it can be a whole different ball game. Now, obviously, depending on how you're hunting, whether you're in a pit blind or you're, being taken out on a boat or you're wading, whatever. But let's just say some dude's hunting some public land timber, right? Like, I mean, what are you looking for in a good pair of waders? And then as far as what you wear underneath and over, maybe a good waterfowl jacket, like what does that kind of stuff look like to you, especially in a beginner lens?
Well, starting in a beginner lens, what I would do is dive off into a pair of waders that's actually going to last more than one season. And what I've found, and I have worn all kind of different waders, but dude, these Frog Tog Grand Refuge series waders have been phenomenal. I have and you've got a pair of Frog Togs too that have been really good. We just got to upgrade you to the out of the neoprenes. But man, these breathable Frog Tog Grand Refuges, they actually have a zip in and out liner, which is unbelievably convenient when you go from early teal season when you don't need that insulation to zip it out and you just have just basic breathable waders, right? And then you get in the cold season, boom, there's your insulation. Zip it right back in and you're ready to rock and roll. So that, as far as waders go, that's where I would start, would be the Frog Togs Grand Refuge 2.0s. Phenomenal choice. I've got several pair of them, and I have worn the absolute fire out of them, and they have been phenomenal. The only leak I ever had was because I stepped on a nail. It's my fault. It was not the wader's fault. I mean, anytime you step on a nail, you're going to create a hole. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works. The wader did great until I stepped on the nail. Yeah, science. So I would start there, and then I would look at, a good pair of wader pants. Like there's several different brands that make good wader pants. Like Sitka is one of them that makes a really good wader pant. They're really solid insulation, and that's what you need. If you're going to be standing in the timber for hours and it's in the 20s, now you got to remember your legs and your body is going to be majority underwater. Now that water is unbelievably cold, really cold, and it will, over time of you standing there, you will become really cold. if you don't have the right layers on to keep you
Yeah.
warm in that situation. Do you remember when we were hunting together a couple years back when I got just absolutely frigid because we had been standing in the timber for hours and hours and I didn't have the right clothes
Oh
on. I
yeah.
didn't factor in my legs are going to be submerged in freezing water for 5 hours. I didn't factor that in, and here we are freezing cold.
Yep. And listen, the one thing I've noticed, it's easy to stay warm whenever you're shooting ducks. And buddy, whenever the ducks aren't flying for that day or that time period or whatever, you get a lot colder a lot faster.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Absolutely. You get a lot colder, a lot faster, and when the ducks are flying and you're shooting them boom, 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 then you become the duck dog if there's not one there. So you're
That's
moving
it.
constantly
It's
and
awesome.
you're keeping up the blood flow and you're not just sitting in one spot all the
And
time.
yeah, exactly. That's the great thing about duck hunting too, just for me, like as far as someone who's, not really been in it my whole life, obviously. Like the fact that your bag limit, you know, and obviously it's only 6 birds, and then in that 6 it varies between what kind of duck and the sex of it and yada yada. But I that's one of the best parts to me is like the fact of limiting out like on a day. I don't know. It's something totally different. Like because if a deer or a turkey, like you're only allowed one a day, it's like yeah, obviously after you shoot the one, you're tagged out for the day, but it's a whole different, I guess, mindset whenever you're duck hunting because it's multiples, and the more people, the higher the limit, all that kind of jazz. I just really think that's a kind of a cool environment that it can create.
Yeah, no, man, it is super cool because, to touch on what you're talking about, and every year's different. Like one year you can only kill one canvasback. Years ago you could kill 3 canvasbacks,
Right.
but it changes with the hatch and the population and all that good stuff. A few years ago you could kill 2 pintails. Now it's 1. You can kill 4 mallards, but only one of them can be a hen. So you can really kill 4 drakes or 3 and 1 hen. That's all you got. So you really have to dive into those rules and figure out exactly how to hunt these birds and know your limits on all the birds. Because yes, you can kill 6, but that
Mm-hmm.
does not mean you can go out there and kill 6 mallards. You can kill 4 mallards and then add 2 with it, right? So that is what you have to look at, or Mr. Green Jeans is going to write you a ticket every time. They don't play around with waterfowl because the waterfowl is a federal bird. It migrates from Canada to us. Some stay here, some go on to Mexico and beyond. But as far as that goes, you need to always make sure that you are knowing the regulations, knowing the limits. Like I said, they change all the time, but know those limits so you do
Yeah.
not get yourself in trouble.
So here's my next question off of that is so again, me didn't grow up with ducks, didn't grow up looking and hearing ducks all day. Like I think that was one of the most impressive things that you and some other people that we've been with can do is like as soon as you see a duck, you're like, "Oh, that's a mallard. Oh, that's a hooded, that's a this, that's a spoon, that's a whatever." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Dude, I barely know it's a duck, let alone what kind of duck." Like I guess does that kind of stuff just happen over time and over just years of seeing them and hearing them, or like how did you like learn to know what's flying in front of you that fast?
Well, the way that I learned is I went out, I sat around and I looked, right? So I would watch mallards for hours and hours and hours. This goes back to learning how to duck call, right? I would go and sit in the swamp and I would listen, but at the same time, I was watching those birds come by and by every time. I learned their wing beats and their flight patterns. So, for example, a mallard, it does not have the same flight or wing beats as a canvasback does. Canvasbacks sound like F-40 fighter jets coming over your head. A mallard does not. It's just a total
Gotcha.
different, and like a pintail, they have a super long neck. So when they're flying by, you can tell it's like, oh, there's a pintail. And they have a sprig, that sticks out from their tail feathers. So there's certain characteristics that you learn to pick up on while you do it. It takes years, man.
Gotcha.
This is not something you're going to learn in one season. You're going to learn
Right.
it
Right.
as you go. Like I said, man, this is not a one season thing. This is 26 years of watching ducks fly that I can be like, oh, there's a wood duck, oh, there's a teal, there's a hooded merganser, a shoveler, whatever. I can tell by certain characteristics, the way their wing beats are, the way their flight patterns are, just whatever they're doing in the air. That's how I learned to associate it with that specific uh, breed of duck is by watching them and just
Mm-hmm.
taking years to do it.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like there's not just, a book on it and you're gonna read it and know it right away. So, you know, it kind of sounds like also if you're starting out, and let's say you and a couple buddies, like after the first flight kind of comes in and you shoot a few, that you're probably better off going and retrieving those ducks and just double checking, like, hey, how many of this duck have we got? How many of this duck? What number are we at before you just start shooting some more? I mean, is that something that people normally do or no?
Yeah. So you definitely want to make sure that you are keeping up with the number of birds that you have as you go, because if you do not, once again, you're going to be in that situation. Oh, snap. Here we are over the limit. So you have to really think about that while you're shooting. And a lot of times, what I'll do is I'll keep a tally in my head, of each volley that comes through. I'm like, okay, we killed 5 out of that one, 4 out of that one more. Okay, cool. But it's still always better
Right.
to go and put your hands on them, get them in the blind, and then you have a for sure count of what you actually have in that blind instead of just it being guesswork.
Gotcha. I mean, that makes sense, I mean, just as far as someone who hasn't really done it, that kind of seems to be what, in my experience of duck hunting that I have had now, that seems to be like the general consensus of like everyone's like, hey, let's just double check before we shoot again, just to be real sure.
Yeah, and two, when you get into the guiding world of it, those guides know. They're like they'll announce it too. They're like, "All right,
Yeah.
boys, we have 2 more birds." You know, that's just what you got to
Right.
know. And
And they
same,
have to be this or that.
yeah. I mean, you
Yeah.
even if you're not guiding, man, you should still practice that and practice the whole. Okay, all right, guys, we got 5 left, or we got 2 left, or we got whatever left. Let's try to knock those out, and we'll get out of here. And sometimes, if it's just big groups working in, I won't even shoot into a big group if you have 2 left or 1 left. I will not shoot into a big group because
Right.
that just escalates your chance to
Makes
kill
sense.
3 or 4 when you only want to kill 1. And then you're messed up real good there. So I would just
Mm.
choose your shots wisely too. When you get down to that area, wait for a single or a pair or whatever. Don't shoot into a big group and be upset when you shoot over the limit on accidentals. That's just my opinion though.
Sure. So I've got a few more things to ask you here.
Yeah.
So um, one of them being the world of decoys. So I come from the turkey hunting world where there are decoys, right? Some people put out maybe 2 hens and a jake, maybe a strutter, maybe some people hide behind a fan. That's kind of like the max. Like the max decoys for turkeys is like 3 to 4, and that's like a lot. Okay, so I'm coming from that world, and then I get picked up and I get dropped into this world of duck hunting, and y'all have got tens of dozens. I mean, we're talking hundreds of decoys in some spreads. Now, I'm not saying that's normal, but a normal spread, I guess, to me, and you can correct me on this, let's just say a 4-person group goes out hunting, right? I would say you generally have somewhere in that 20 to 30 mark of decoys. I mean, it just seems like it's a lot. And I guess where I'm going with this is number one, is that normal or am I being crazy? And two, how many decoys does a person really need to finish and shoot a duck?
Well, that all depends on where you're hunting and what time of the season it is. So, for example, growing up hunting public land, I had to have a whole lot of decoys to compete with everybody else that was around. So we would use coots, a lot of coots. Coots are little black ducks that have these long legs and feet that are greenish brown color, more of a greenish gray,
Hmm.
and they're confidence decoys. So if you look at the way canvasbacks and other divers fly the river system, right, they're always sitting with those type of birds every time. So if you want to
Okay.
land more birds, you have to put those confidence boosters in with your spread to make them think, oh, well, this is just normal. This is what everybody else is doing. So they'll more easily land in a spread that looks natural to them than one that is just birds, like for example, just the canvasback decoys out there. So, dude, I would take. There's been
Mm,
times that I have taken, 10 dozen coots, just the coots, 10 dozen of them, and I didn't think that was enough.
really?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
That's
I thought,
wild.
man, this ain't enough to get me what I need to get here. And then, other times I take out, like if you're hunting golden eyes, golden eyes like to sit by themselves. So you'll take out 3 or 4 of them and that's it. That's all you take. You don't take anything else, just them. And that is all.
Okay.
And one little trick for all you listeners out there. If you like
Yeah.
to hunt golden eyes, find you a golden eye hen somewhere, somehow, and put it at the end of the decoy rig closest to you. That'll help you. Trust me, I've killed a lot of golden eyes.
Now, I want you to dive into that of of what you just said. So, decoy rig. I've noticed that there's some uh decoys that have the little, I'm going to say string, that's not the right word, some sort of cable or wire or whatever, right? And then it has a weight on the end. Whether that weight bends or doesn't, I'm sure that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, you have like a single decoy, right? And you guys are throwing those out there, and then there's some like on a rig on a string, right? That are maybe 6 or 8, whatever it is, together that one guy pulls on, and then now obviously you may get into some battery powered stuff where like the Mojo thing where the wings are always going. So I mean, is it really important for a beginner to have like a pack of 6 decoys and then another pack of 6 that's on a string so they can create motion? I mean, that's big, right? I mean, the whole idea of like moving ducks, right? That's the idea.
Right, that's the idea. But once again, it is all situational. So when you're hunting canvasbacks and divers, I run long lines. So what that is that is an anchor on one end,
Okay.
and from the anchor it goes to a bungee cord, and from a bungee cord to the decoy line that sets on top. So what that does is with a wave, it allows those decoys to go with the wave, and then the bungee cord pulls them back. Right. So but they're
Oh,
all on the
okay.
same line. They're all put together on the same line. You don't have to use a bungee cord. That's not even required. That's just something I did because I was bored and wanted to do something different. So I was getting creative. My redneck ingenuity was coming out to try to, well, how do I
That's
make a
right.
motion decoy for divers, man? I was trying to come up with something super cool there.
Heard that.
But what I'm getting at is for divers, long lines tend to work the best because that's generally how they sit, that's how they swim, yada yada. They land better into those scenarios. So with mallards and other ducks, they sit individually, spread out all through the hole. So what I do on those is I use Texas rigs. And what a Texas rig for simple explanation, it's like offshore fishing
Okay.
line. It's got a loop on one end. It's got a
Mhm.
swivel that travels through, and then a weight on the other end. So you can
Okay.
move them. You can put them all on the same carabiner, hang them up in the trailer, hang them up on your side by side, on the wall, whatever. It makes it super convenient, super easy to pick up and transport. The other type is the slap weight, which is the one you actually wrap around the keel, but that is stationary, so you have to unwind
Okay.
all that line. Now, when I'm hunting
Gotcha.
super deep water, that's what I'll use on all my mallards is a slap weight or some sort like that is on a long line so I can get it as deep as I need to get it for that. Now, with the golden eyes, I do that too because a lot of times a golden eye is going to be in your rocky outcroppings, deeper water, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, dude, there's even times where you have to tie your decoy line to your boat and anchor your boat and just let your decoy line float on out in front of you. Just give it a lot of extra line so it gets out there far enough so they know it's not, somebody crazy. And then, I mean, I've seen that happen before. They do that in Alaska sometimes. But that's kind of the difference in the decoys is it's all situational. Everything is different. Now, do you have to do a long line on divers to kill them successfully? No. You can use Texas rigs. You can use all that stuff. But that's just what I've found that has helped me move efficiently when I have to pick up and go try a new spotter. I see them landing 100 yards down, but they won't look at us. We just pick up, we're gone. Because all you got to do is pull that long line up and sit it in the boat. And then when you get to where you're going, you dump that anchor out and all the decoys go with it right off the side. So it just makes it easier for me and the style that I like to hunt. Like I said, it's not for everybody, but that's just how I like to do it.
Sure. So you keep saying like divers versus this and that. Like what's the like dive into that a little bit. What's a diver versus a what?
So you have your divers and your puddle ducks, and then there's geese, swans, and mergansers.
Okay.
Your divers are going to be your redheads, canvasbacks, bluebills, ringneck type birds, and then you're going to have your and sea ducks too. That's a whole nother different area. But then the puddlers,
whole nother discussion.
Yeah, and you got dabblers too. There's a whole bunch of different things here, but a puddle duck is more like your mallards, your gadwalls, stuff like that. So that's more of that, and your sea ducks are more your eiders and your white-winged scoters, your surf scoters, old squaw, also known as a long-tailed duck. Those are more of your sea ducks. So that's the difference in my opinion. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm referring to divers versus puddle ducks, dabblers, all that stuff. That is what I'm referring to.
Gotcha. Right on. So the bottom line to all this was just talking to someone who's starting it. So it sounds like if you're brand new looking to get into it, you need to spend the money on the waders, maybe a good pair of wader pants and a jacket, and then go get you just a nice, reliable, on the cheaper end pump shotgun, some good shells that'll cycle through it, and then maybe a few decoys, a good mallard call, maybe a teal call, and rock on.
Yeah. Just make sure that your shot is non-toxic. That's what I'll make sure of. Don't shoot lead; you'll get in trouble. Yeah. So definitely don't shoot lead and shoot straight. That is all for us today. This is the old redneck signing out. Thank y'all so much for watching this and listening to this episode. Don't forget, like and subscribe to all of our networks, all of our platforms on the socials and all that stuff. Thank you guys. Redneck out.
We are everywhere. See y'all.
For all things Rooted Podcast and Rooted Television, and I mean hats, shirts, hoodies, and other merch, check out our friends at CH Lone Star Pro and the link that is in our description.